Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the Psychedelic Support Speaker Series. I'm your host, Dr. Allison Fiducia. And today I'm thrilled to have Lauren Taus join us to talk about embodied integration. Because as many of you know, psychedelic experiences are one part of a big equation, especially if we're talking about utilizing these experiences for healing and well-being and addressing mental health conditions. So today, Lauren Taus is a psychedelic-assisted therapist. She's trained to work with both psychoactive compounds and plant medicines. She runs a group therapy practice in Los Angeles, California, and is leading a really exciting training program called Inbodied Life, a psychedelic-assisted therapy and integration training that's going to be held in October in Topanga, California. So I'm going to drop the links in a moment to where you can find out more about Lauren and this training program. Also, really want to highlight her Instagram channel, which has amazing content. She shares excellent tips and techniques for clients and clinicians to really learn more about psychedelics and implement a lot about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be here for about an hour, and at the end, Lauren is going to be able to take some questions. So I do encourage you all to chat throughout in the group chat here through text. And as you have questions, you can drop them in and I'll start collecting them for the end. But, oftentimes we have people in the audience that have great responses or other wisdom to share. So feel free to be networking in the chat and sharing some information there. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lauren. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Allie. It feels so nice to be here with all of you, and I appreciate the introduction. I'll share a little bit more about me before I dive into the wonderful world of integration. So I am a humble student in this planetary classroom. I am always learning, and I am continuing learning what it is to be alive and to be integrated, right? The word integration ultimately means wholeness. And I myself have had my own healing journey, and that has included therapy. It has included a lot of yoga. I was a yoga teacher first and trained to be that at the age of 18. I'm now 40. It wasn't until I was in my later 20s that I became a clinician. But the body continues to be very central to all of my work. And it was central to my healing journey as well. Psychedelics, of course, have been, some of my greatest teachers, and the people who have facilitated to them in good ways for me have been my teachers. And I have, through the experiences in these realms, really transformed my relationship with life, with earth, and with the earth that is my body, that is my slice of the planet to steward in a kind and good way. So my therapy practice is called Inbodied Life. I was recently exploring whether I should change that, and really anchored in, nope, that's exactly it. I like to play with the word in. It's in relationship, it's in learning, it's in training, it's in therapy, it's in life, it's in spirituality, it's in, let's go in together. And it is a tremendous honor for me to be in this conversation, to be here sharing what I know and love with all of you. And I hope that it's resonant and supportive and potentially useful for you in the ways in which you practice or live your lives in a good and integrated way. So that's a little bit about my come from. And I said it in a podcast interview for Women on Psychedelics. It just came out of my mouth. Life is psychedelic and integration is a lifestyle. And so that's sort of become a kind of quote of mine that I like to repeat. Came out of me. I was like, whoa, that was a good line. And, life is psychedelic. We are tripping the entire time that we're here. Our brains actually naturally secrete DMT, and that's a thing. But as well, the word psychedelic just means mind expansion or soul revealing. And at all times that we're here, including in our dream state, we are encountering new information. And how we make sense of and integrate that information determines the quality of our experience here. I believe that we all come in whole and innocent and good. And I believe that that's a state to return to learn again and again and again and again. So life is psychedelic. And, I think probably the most psychedelic thing outside of being born is to have children. I have yet to take that journey, but for the mothers and fathers on the line here, I honor that psychedelic psychonaut in you that's tripping with your babies. The ultimate exercise in surrender, in love, in the challenge of life. So when I think about psychedelic assisted therapy, right? When I think about when we work with and partner with the allies of plants and compounds, I want to just start by saying that these should only ever be part of a treatment plan, right? A small part. This is not a panacea. This is not a silver bullet. I can't even tell you how many people reach out with an immediate need for ketamine therapy. No, it's a slow process. And as a clinician, I look at the ketamine field specifically as one that is nuanced and developing and pioneering. And there's lots of good ways to do this work with ketamine and with the other compounds and plants. There's lots of good ways. But when we're waving the flag of therapeutic, it must be relational. And the relationship is perhaps the biggest and most important medicine that is present, right? We are all in one unified field ultimately. And the only way to engage with the concept of oneness is through separation. Otherwise we're in it and of it. And we are, but like to interact with it requires some degree of separate. Now, the psychedelic experiences open up content immediately that is intergenerational, transpersonal, and collective. This content is running anyway. It's always running, but we develop our ways of being in the world and our patterns of doing the doings that need to be done, and we forget and we don't appreciate what else is going on here. It's astonishing and mesmerizing and amazing to engage in psychedelic experiences in good ways. And there are ultimately like many different ways to engage with these things. I want to also just name that people engage in psychoactive substances for, in my mind, one of two umbrella reasons. One is sort of the hello, for the exploration, the excavation, the healing, the recovery, the discovery, the celebration, right? And that can be done individually in a self-guided way, that can be done therapeutically, that can be done ceremonially, that can be done in many ways. They also we engage in ways of departure, in ways of, I don't have the inner resourcing to tolerate the happenings of my experience, and so I'm gonna leave. And there's almost something skillful about the departure because it allows a person to stay here. And what I'm encountering that in my practice, and I often do, people being addicted to their phones, to their work, to their sex, to drugs, to alcohol, to what have you. There's something skillful about it and intelligent that deserves to be honored and worked with in a kind and curious way, not a judgy one, so that that part can soften and perhaps a person can shift into the hello, into the realms of hello. So integration. Integration is, Carl Jung said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. The word in Latin means to make whole or to begin again. In French, the act of bringing together the parts of a whole. And in English, to put together parts of elements and combine them into one. So this is about wholeness, about oneness, about health. And the reality is, and Gabor Mate talks extensively about this, we as little people, as babies, we so often sacrifice our authenticity to belong. We sacrifice our authenticity to belong, and it's a survival mechanism, right? It's actually useful. And as we grow into adults, that very same sacrifice becomes the source of our suffering. And we splinter off from ourselves. when, and again, the trauma happens, and life is traumatic. Like life is traumatic. I think being born on some level is a traumatic experience. To leave that like primordial oneness that I imagine exists before, perhaps even during and after, like it's a lot to steward a body wrapped in skin on planet Earth. And then even in the best of ways, our primary systems cause harm, right? It's impossible to be perfect. And so we splinter and cut off, we shut down and we shut up from very important parts of us, and we forget about them until maybe we start to look and examine and explore, and doing that in a number of different ways. We can do that, of course, with spiritual practices. We can do that with meditation, with yoga, with therapy, with good relationship, with friendship, with life, with the trees. And yes, we can do that with the tools of compounds and plants. So when we're talking about a psychedelic experience, I want to just also backtrack a little bit and name that we're operating still in a system where drugs are not yet legal, right? So the system is holding a collective mindset that might signal danger, that might signal I'm not safe, I might get in trouble, is this okay? And that is going to inform partially the experience, right? You know, I'm preparing for Burning Man. And so everyone, you know, everyone's sending out messages about like how to stay safe around these things. The cultural mindset that we carry is important. And the cultural mindset is one that also is exciting at this time, right? There's so much energy and movement and business building, which sometimes causes me concern, but there's a lot of energy moving forward, indicating perhaps more safety for people. So that gets to be named, and also the system that holds the individual in their experience, right? So I said we're all part of a oneness, and we're part of many different systems. And whatever the system is that holds an individual is going to be impacted. Like the homeostasis will be impacted by the experience of the individual experiencing it. And in that way, it can be really skillful to involve and include the system in advance of an experience. So speaking the obvious here, the experience begins before the experience begins. And preparation is everything, right? What does that mean? It means a lot of different things. From the lens of a psychedelic-assisted therapist, the preparation begins with relationship. I don't bring anybody to inner outer space unless I know clearly who's who in their zoo, where they're looking to go and grow, what's alive inside. I need to know these things. And I need essentially to feel comfortable holding this person and whatever dying needs to happen. And whatever dying needs to happen for more life to come, right? And I need to feel comfortable with the experience itself. So also a note, if you are a facilitator, and I imagine many of you here are, like be versed in the medicine that you're facilitating. Okay, I'm going to say that and I pause and I see some nodding heads, and those of you with your cameras on, thank you. It's so nice to see your beautiful faces here. It's be versed in the medicine that you're facilitating. Right? This is not diabetes medicine, and this is a whole different realm of experiencing that you must have familiarity with in order to hold that well. And within the scope specifically of ketamine worlds, there's a lot of providers who have never experienced this medicine. And okay, but I don't recommend it. So the preparation begins with the relationship that you have with the individual that you're supporting or the group that you're supporting, right? I can't stress this enough, because integration involves making sense of the experience afterwards and having tools and relationships that are going to support the translation of the experience in the ways that are both big, beautiful, and divine, and also the ways that are challenging. Okay, so you're going to need someone on the back end. We're not operating in indigenous tribal contexts where the integration is part of the fabric of those communities, right? That's just not where we are. we're operating in a world where most people are paying for therapy, right? They're paying for somebody to listen to them because this is the system that we're in. So the preparation involves deep levels of relationship building. This can happen quickly. And as someone who facilitates often as ancillary support, right? For those of you ketamine providers out there, if you're already doing this kind of work, and I know that the psychedelic support has a really exciting training coming online soon. I have a training in October if you're interested. Learn it, but get dialed. And you can also work within the context of other relationships that are supporting an individual. So for example, I partner with physicians, I partner with other therapists, I partner in team to support a person. This work should not be done alone. And I say that not just for the individual having the experience, but also for you providing the experience. Now, relationship building, number one. Number two, like give the person the kind of a little bit of context about what they might experience. If they are a totally psychedelically naive person, they might be really nervous. And by the way, I'm always nervous. If I'm really deep diving on purpose into the realms of the unknown, it's a little scary. And I consider that fear, and I call that fear reverence. That's respect. And I have a prayer that I walk with that level of respect daily, that I realize the wonder and awe of just being here. But when again, we partner with the plant or a compound, like you really diving into unknown spaces and you're signing up for that. So to give context for the experience, I like to remind people that everything is always changing. I like to remind people that everything is sacred, that everything is interconnected, that the place of power is now, that the place of power is here, right? And that can invite a person's context and mental frame and in a sort of metacognition type of way as they open to what comes. As well, for support, I like to invite people to appreciate the use of mantra, right? You can use the mantras like trust, let go, be open. You can invite people to make up their own mantras. You can invite someone to use the mantra, I am safe. And I want to just signal something around the word safety. Oftentimes providers will say, oh, just trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Let someone develop the ability to trust in that process. Let a person have their trepidation. Let them be in the space of interviewing you. Let them be in the space of interviewing the medicine and assessing from their own authority, from their own sovereignty, whether this is a fuck yes or not. So careful with the trust the process language and be in the space of building the trust together. Integration is also very relational. So giving the individual a mental framework, you can also include energetic anchors. Like I want to move into this experience with curiosity as an anchor. I want to move into this experience with love as an anchor. I want to move into this experience with again, maybe trust, but these are going to be developed and named by the individual participant having the experience that they will be experiencing. Now, setting, right? We've talked a little bit about how the cultural mindset is informed by the fallacious and deeply problematic, harmful drug policies of this country in the United States, and lots of people coming in from other places. But I know we've done a really effective job at exporting these concepts internationally. So we get to also be mindful of that mindset and the setting, right? So if you're going to be facilitating this medicine and within the space of ketamine, and I keep mentioning ketamine because it's the only legal menu option right now in the United States, as Ali shared, I'm trained by MAPS in the MDMA protocol, very excited about the prospect of that becoming a legal medicine soon. And I have trained in other plants in the wild, in the shamanic realms, but the setting is essential, right? Most ketamine experiences that people are having out there are in doctors' offices that feel really sterile. I do a lot of work out of my home. and it's cozy, and there's blankets, and there's art on the walls, and there's trees outside my windows, and the space is warm and inviting, and conducive to relaxing, right? I call it my den of Zen, and it's been appreciated by my friends and family and many of my clients. So creating an environment that is conducive to the experience. Preparation. And once you establish for those elements, you might also consider the system, right? I talked about systems. I'm going to talk more about systems. The family member, right? So often I've been in ceremonies or spaces where the primary caregivers and family members don't know where the person is. So I think that this is also connected to the mindset, to the fear that is often pervasive in the space. But if it's appropriate, I really invite people to explore connecting on some level with the people who are involved in the client's most intimate system, because their experience is likely to disrupt the system's homeostasis. So maintaining the integration is going to be challenging to the extent that the system doesn't know that this is happening and may resist that happening. A dear friend of mine, psychologist Adele LaFrance, talks a lot about including family members in care. In fact, in the United Kingdom, if a patient is coming with a significant mental health problem, the primary caregivers are entitled to care themselves. So nobody's hurting alone out there. And the impact of the pain of any part of a system has reverberations beyond it. So to the extent that is possible, I invite you in the space of preparation to include as much as you can. And ideally to include members of the system that might be good allies, that might be good cheerleaders, that might be able to support the translation, again, because integration is about the translation of return to wholeness. These are some elements that I want to kind of flag within the realm of preparation. So then there's the magic of the experience itself. I have been shown and grown so many things by flying the wings of many plants and compounds, and I am indebted to them all. And I'm again indebted to the people who have served me in good ways. And they have served me in good ways by being the practice of the thing that they're offering. So again, be in the practice of the thing that you're offering. And then many things can present. It's consciousness, and consciousness is unpredictable every time. Every time. This is something that scientists often struggle with, right? Even the word mind can be confrontive or uncomfortable for scientists. They want it all to be brain. They want it to be measurable. They want it to be understandable. We are in the wonderful world of the unknown, the wild unknown. And people have experiences that are so beautiful, sometimes so divine, so mystical. I have supported many individuals with breakthroughs around the experience of love and joy. Right? Joy is actually a breakthrough emotion for people, often. You know, we say we want to be happy, we want to be happy, we want to be happy, we want to be happy. Happy is entirely contingent on our ability to play the rest of the emotional keyboard. Our ability to access joy requires us to access joy. It requires us to access our sadness, our fear, and our anger. So we disintegrate when those emotions are not safe to express. And what we don't express, we suppress and repress. And it shows up as disease and dis-ease of all kinds. And those of you clinicians here in this space right now, you know that, you see that, you work with that every day. And good therapy, never mind any psychedelic, good therapy should be psychedelic. Good therapy should support widening the aperture, peeling the layers back so that a person can all of a sudden see more of what's going on from a lens that might be more compassionate and caring. And when we open these gates with these potent partner allies of plants and compounds, there are experiences that are delightful, and there are experiences that are very hard. And I have also supported people while they've literally screamed for an hour. Screamed. And I was concerned someone might call the cops, right? And that scream needed to come out. That primal scream needed to come out. And I have supported people in experiences that have been so disruptive for them that on the back end, they're disrupted and disintegrated and in deep, deep need of continued care, right? So the joy ride or the fear ride or whatever it is, it's going to need support on the back end. This is like where integration as a term essentially comes into practice. But as I mentioned and stressed for the first 15 or 20 minutes already, it starts before it starts. And two of the experiences that generally translate to the most positive treatment outcomes within the larger realms of psychedelic experiencing are deep experiences of love, right? To return to the goodness of your own heart, to feel your heart is connected to the heart, right? We are all part of the experience of life, the experience. We are part of like branches of the experience. And in the realms of the mystical, right, in the realms of cosmic unity, of the noetic, of the ineffable, we often in the West don't have language for that, right? As I mentioned, scientists don't even like the word mind. Now, there are certainly schools of thought in the Western world like Gestalt therapy, transpersonal therapy, and other systems that appreciate the mystical. But at large, we have had a tendency to want to pathologize it, to make it a sickness. Okay. Maslow considers it something that is a natural urge and need. I agree with that. And having had the good privilege and blessing to dive into it in many different ways, I'm just so grateful for it, to have the context for it, right? But often in the world that we live in, medical providers or even therapists are not going to have the lexicon or understanding for that, which translates to harm for the individual. And that might look like something that shows up in your office and requires some unpacking and some healing, some reorganizing. And hopefully with the theoretical orientations and frameworks that you carry as psychedelically inclined practitioners or people, you'll be able to support the restructuring and the honoring of those beautiful experiences that are native to us all, right? The Eastern world has a natural fabric for that. It's part and parcel for how they interpret and understand and move through their lives. This is not the case here. And similarly, I've been in the reflection around Walter Pahnke's Good Friday experiment, which was in the 60s at Harvard Divinity School. And that was supervised by, of course, our wonderful Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, where they were exploring whether these tools would open up mystical experiences and within the realm of the religiously inclined. I'm sure you have some familiarity with this experiment. And the answer, of course, was yes, it does. And it did. And it's brought to mind for me that we don't, in the United States, certainly, most of the United States, have really a good solid space for our spirit or the appreciation that we might have one. So as we provide these kinds of experiences or have these kinds of experiences, we might then be galvanized into deeper levels of practice. So it's very important to acknowledge again that the human experience is ridden with trauma. And whether that's capital T trauma, lowercase t trauma, it's pervasive. And if we understand that we're all ultimately connected, that even if our personal experiences have been quite blessed to not be too painful, that the pain of the ones nearby, in our families, in our communities, is also impacting us. That we need ways to kind of understand that and heal that and integrate that and not shut it off and down. Okay, so again, integration is coming back to wholeness. So how do we do that? The relationship is necessary. And so I've heard so many stories, I'm sure you've heard so many stories, where people are not given support on the back end of big experiences. And I think not having it is cruel. To just send someone to an ayahuasca experience and then send them back to some urban life without any kind of support for how to meaning make or translate the experience into the 3D, right? The goal, in many ways, at least from a therapeutic lens, is to support right relations in this dimension. The goal is to support good, kind, loving engagement with self, other, and the planet in this dimension without any psychedelic, right? Just to be able to love what maybe you haven't loved, to love what you've hated, to forgive. And also to hold the space for whatever emotions that you might have, right? I named, the fear already, joy already, and the primary emotions in my mind, there's 4 of them. Everything else is a shade of one of them. There's joy, fear, anger, and sadness. Joy, fear, anger, and sadness. And our ability to process those emotions to completion allows for us to be alive here now, right? The emotions it's the energetic frequency of aliveness. You don't think feelings. Nobody thinks a feeling. Everything has a somatic counterpart. Life is a body-based exercise. It's not a cognitive one. And these experiences that psychedelics open are experiential. They're experiential. So I'm feeling called to share now that, I'm very committed to family work. The intimate architecture of everybody's life is designed by the mother and father or whatever stand-in that looks like, even if there's nothing, right? That intimate architecture is designed by the so-called family. And, I believe that these tools can heal lifelines, like ancestries, and can shift the forward movement in a really healthy, good way. And I know this, I know that these tools specifically would have helped my mother to live longer. My mom had a lot of expensive treatment that didn't work and re-traumatized her. Now, that's not to say that psychedelics can't traumatize someone. They can, and they do. Psychedelics are neutral. They're innocent. They're literally neutral and innocent. And it's how we work with them that matters, how we partner with them. I also have seen my father, from the ages of 75 to 78, a man who went to decades of psychoanalysis, decades, read all the books, really change. He says he's never been happier, and this is entirely because of psychedelics. In a good way, in a good way. So, to name that. When you're working with someone, know that you're working with their life, their history. You're working with their mom and dad. You're working with all of that. The intergenerational content presents with these tools. And so whoever you are, whether you are a clinical provider or a guide working on the ground in a good way, or just someone that's interested, I invite you to really sharpen your tools so that you can be effective in the aftermath of the experience with people. Now, that involves, how do we make meaning of what happened? How do we anchor the good of an experience so that it informs this lived life? There may be visuals that present. There may be body-based experiences that come up. There may be unfinished fear that needs to be completed, right? And you'll want to use your psychotherapeutic emotional toolkit to support the processing of that experience. In my book and in my way of engaging, this is going to require a daily practice. Trauma, specifically early childhood trauma, exists in the brainstem. So that impacts how a person's life rhythm is structured, and that informs how they experience life. It is possible to develop a new rhythm, but that new rhythm is not going to happen in one experience or in 1 hour of weekly therapy. that new rhythm is going to require sustained, committed action. So in all of my ways of working, whether with clients, with groups, within the teaching containers, I emphasize the importance of daily practice. And there's a lot of resistance often people encounter. People don't want to sit with themselves. So I hope you get real cozy with you in order that you can support other people getting cozy with themselves. And that practice gets to involve like meditation, movement, prayer, nature, good relationships, journaling. I mean, speaking the obvious, healthy eating, and forgiveness for the oops and uh-oh that happens as part of the human ride. But really working towards a daily way of living the life that can be fertilized and accelerated towards more wholeness by these types of experiences. So it's not always like fun and pretty, right? There's so much interest in this field, and also like, this is tough work. I'm like to think about Jack Kornfield's After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. And after these kind of big experiences and like the 2-week sparkle shine moments, it can get really hard. And it can, and the rubber band of character can snap people back to old ways quickly. So that's where, you know, the continued aftercare is necessary. The continued degree of relationship. And again, if you're the provider, that might mean just ensuring that the system that the person is part of is also getting involved, that they're sharing about it, right? In dyadic work, which is most of what I do, it's beautiful and also limited. It can keep people in the same problematic cognitive process loops that had them seeking support in the first place. It can keep people in the same sort of pathological narcissistic processes. People need to be in relationship with their systems. And so many of the conversations that happen within the realm of a therapeutic alliance and dynamic are conversations that need to happen outside of it. And good, let's get the practice in here. Let's practice it. We can do some gestalt around that, some chair work. We can do whatever we do, some psychodrama on it, but then be in the space of encouraging the action. Life is an action sport. So this is, the work is immensely exciting and promising because people with these tools have an experiential reference point of wholeness. They can have, and often do, right? I like the word holotropic, Stan Groff's work, like holos, whole, tropine, moving toward, right? This is about moving towards our natural wholeness again. This is about restoration of authenticity, restoration of boundary setting, and restoration of relationship in good ways, right? I'm a Jewish woman, and you know, Judaism and my spiritual religion and practice teaches that we should elevate the physical, not abdicate from it. That we should be in right and good relationship with food, with sex, and have those things and enjoy those things. That we should be in right relations with our families, right? It's really family centered. That we should dress well and enjoy this life and elevate it and celebrate it, right? So these psychedelics can support that. Like I said, it's not all sparkles. Some people have immensely challenging journeys. Content can come up that doesn't complete then, that can be traumatic, that requires a lot of careful attention in the aftermath. And it's important that you feel and develop a level of comfort in being in the pain and difficulty of it, and not having the answers, but just letting it ride out and staying present. Like staying present with the person, bearing witness in a kind and loving way. It's not for you to have the answer. Like it's to be with that is more important. I see too that there's a lot of movement that can be a little bypassy in the space, and it's really important that we invite these tools into bigger dialogues around inclusion, around working to make a better world. Like we're still very much in models of domination and extraction and profit, right? I think it's very weird in some ways that like this is a job that I have, that I get paid to do this job, but this is the system that we live in. And we really need to like do the laundry here. And as people that are actively involved in this space, like how do we work on reparations? How do we work on, again, inclusion and diversity? I don't have all the answers to these questions, but I'm involved in the asking and in the space of efforting towards something that is more accurate, that is more integrated, right? Our system is disintegrated. The larger system is disintegrated. And certain integration prompts that I like to invite people into, which I'll share right now, because I think it might support how we think about integrating not only our individual systems, but also the larger ones that we're part of, is again, like, what is energetically, emotionally coming up for you? What are the insights? What are the feelings? What's happening in your body? I mean, I in every single therapy session that I lead, I start with a brief mindfulness and embodiment practice to separate that space from other spaces. How do we make meaning of what's happened? We're meaning-making machines, and the stories that we tell ourselves matter. So the integration is an action, and it's about the choices that we make after. We want to work with the experience to expand clarity, perspective, wisdom, to address any questions or confusions or impasses, and to capitalize on the neuroplasticity, because of course, like the psychedelics disrupt the default mode network. So that necessary interruption, disruption, allows for new conversations to start happening in your own mind, with your own being. And that is immensely generative, immensely generative. I also like to invite people to consider if there's anyone that they're feeling called to connect with, and to explore, again, the visuals that might have presented, any sort of kind of dreamlike things, memories that come up, what messages might be coming from the unconscious conscious, what wants to be acted upon, what parts of the self came online that might have been exiled previously. And what does this look like? What does it look like and feel like moving forward? So I would say that for me, some of the most precious gifts that I've received from my larger psychedelic experiences are the restoration of imagination, to dream, have been as well the entirely radically transformed relationship that I have with nature. And my own nature, right? My own human nature reflected in nature. I lived in New York City, I mentioned, for 17 years. I don't know how I did that. Like now I'm just like looking to retreat into the trees where I can commune with the divine there, like the frequency of aliveness that comes off of the leaves and the sky and the birds and the sun, right? Like we are still kind of in the hangover of André Descartes and this idea that we should dominate nature, that mind and body are separate. Right? Like, no. Mind and body are in an intimate dance, and we want to presence the dance and listen to your body. Right? Listen to the wisdom that's coming forward from the body, and then let that inform the next step. Like with integration, I mean, and I can name many different examples. I see that there might be some questions coming forward. I'm going to share one integration story, and then maybe open up for some questions. So I would say that my personal favorite medicine for transformation is ayahuasca. And In my last experience with the grandmother, I told her, oh my gosh, you're everything. I love you so much. You're everything. You're the one. And she's like, don't do that to me. Like, we all sit in circle. We all sit in circle. So an invitation to really be out of hierarchy and domination in the conversation around drugs, because when we vilify any substance, we vilify the people that are using them. And let's not do that. Let's not. That being said, we're allowed to have our preferences, and we're allowed to be in the sovereign decision-making. And I once had an experience with the grandmother where this was many years ago, and I was struggling a lot with body image, and I was weighing myself a lot. And she very specifically told me that if I continued to do that, my life would not change and my life would not grow, and that there was a lot available for me, but that I would need to take this action of throwing the scale away. And I puked about that for a while and ultimately decided to take the action. And not everybody gets such clear directions, right? I have been gifted and given very clear directions, but there can also be like really delightful visuals. You know, I've experienced a big lion in a ketamine journey, for example, which was reminding me to galvanize my voice, to set certain boundaries that I was struggling to name. And in that space, I was also like processing the silence of certain female members of my family, my mother specifically, and anchoring in the lion, okay, so that I could take the next action. And I did it, right? These experiences are full of divine wisdom designed specifically for the individual. And our job is to support the integration, not only in our own lives, right, with what we encounter, but in the lives of the people who we might be serving. And the signals and the wisdom can come archetypically, can come through directions that are very clear, can come through colors, can come through, you know, repressed memory that surfaces, right? Sometimes that surfacing can also be necessary for the completion of whatever that is, but it will require a lot more work on the back end. And just to name as well that after an experience, it's best not to make big decisions for 72 hours. You know, some people want to go immediately tattoo something on their body or get a divorce or leave their job. And all of those might be great ideas, but you might want to sit with it for a moment. There can be, you know, efforts to make bad or wrong the facilitator. And sometimes that's accurate and sometimes it's not. And there can be, you know, zigzagging and all kinds of like disruption, like you're disrupting the system. And so an invitation to be patient and compassionate in whatever presents after the disruption. And an invitation as well to give the experience the gift of your time and attention, to meditate on it, to journal on it, to spend time with it, perhaps to return to the music of it, and ultimately then to practice it. I have seen in my own personal life, and I share myself so as not to share with my clients, but I have lots of stories there, is that the experiences fertilize my meditations in the morning. You know, just this morning, I was sitting with gratitude for my parents and the lessons that I received from them, the ones that were both beautiful and the ones that were challenging. And I saw them and their parents 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 and the whole line of my ancestry behind me on both of my sides, calling me forward to lead my life from my heart, to widen the space across my chest, to lift my sternum up, to keep my eyes up, to live this wild gift in the fullness of who I am, unapologetically as who I am. And that is the work of integration, right? And that is a practice. So again, an invitation to be in your practices, to be inviting others into practice, to be in relationship with, to remember that the journey begins before the journey begins. And so whether that's you facilitating or you preparing, really like dial up your preparation, make sure you feel good with whoever it is that's serving you, or that you feel really good providing for an individual. Big, expansive, open heart while sitting with. And again, it's sort of a dyadic kind of relational process, whether you're having the journey yourself or whether you're facilitating it. And lots of work on the back end, lots of skillful work on the back end. So we've got about 10 minutes and I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, I hope that this has been supportive and helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So many great nuggets here. I'll start teeing up some questions for you, but I have one to start. This rubber band of personality. I feel like this is a common thing that happens with psychedelics, where people have these big experiences and very inspired after to do a bunch of things, and then the old patterns set in. So what can we do to keep the magic alive?
So again, that's where the daily practice comes in. This is, these experiences are big and profound, and they do lose their sparkle after a period. And, I would invite people to be cautious about whatever promises they might make themselves or others in the immediate aftermath, but may the experiences inspire the honoring of the experience by sitting with it, and let that perhaps then fertilize a deeper level of commitment in the here now. Right, because that's where we are, and it's makes all the difference to have a practice that establishes a rhythm that is in line with the spirit of these experiences.
Excellent, thank you. I have a question here from Angela, who's asking about, can you say a little bit more about this bypassing tendency that you see in practice?
Yeah. There's a lot of bypassing. Well, there's, it's all love, and sometimes there's still a lot of anger to process. I apologize for the swear, but I like to say you can't bypass the fuck you on your way to forgiveness. And there's a right for people to be angry with life and experiences, right? Anger signals boundary violations and injustice. And anger is something that we generally have like an anaphylactic allergy towards. So we kind of like to pretend we don't have it, and then it comes out sideways. So there's often a bypass of emotional content through the sort of ecstatic realms that psychedelics can open up. As well, I do think that there's a bypass around like, oh, we're all one. Yes, we are. And that's not the reality of this life. The systems that we are operating in are sick and patriarchal, and I love that Bell Hooks says the first crime of patriarchy is against men. And that's really important to remember. Like, this isn't about demonizing men. I love men, but we live in like racist, patriarchal, sexist, heteronormative rules that create a difference in experience for certain people with certain identities. And if that's just whitewashed as, oh, we're all one, like, we're not doing the work. And the laundry, right? And again, Jack Kornfield's After the Ecstasy, the laundry, we have work to do around making this a world where we are actually all considered, given our various diverse identity constructions and cultures and backgrounds and histories. So there's often a systemic bypass that happens in these spaces and places, and personal bypassing of emotional content through the sort of extraordinary and often ecstatic realms.
Perfect. Our next question is, do you have any written questions that you ask clients to fill out before a medicine journey to identify intention?
I do have preparation and integration worksheets. And I love when people take the thoughtful time and care to fill them out. They generally do. And I'd be happy to share them with you, Ali, if you wanted to kind of pass them along. I think that any sort of prompts, especially with the psychedelically naive, can be useful when there's sort of like no way of engaging with this prior to having the experience. And even when somebody does have a lot of experience under their belt in these realms, it's super useful to really be thoughtful about your why. And I like to say that the intention should be worn like a loose sweatshirt and not a tight corset, that you should have an intention when you're traveling into the inner outer space. and simultaneously a flexibility to allow the happening to unfold as it should and as it does.
Awesome. We have someone else asking about a workbook, and I want to give a plug for some of the CIS participants in their certificate program for psychedelic assisted therapies are creating a free integration workbook for us for clinicians. So we'll be putting that out, I don't know, maybe in a few months, maybe early next year. And it'll just be, a great resource for everybody that wants to check that out, to support clients, to support your own practices. But the next question we have is, where did it go? Okay, yeah. How do you feel about microdosing psilocybin?
I feel great about it. I mean, and that's not my expertise, but I think that the mushroom is a beautiful thing, and I will invite you to check out Jim Fadiman's work and Paul Stamets and see for yourself. But I definitely am an advocate of the mushroom in its many forms, micro, macro.
Yeah, I think the dosing piece is going to be a real goldmine for the research that's happening to really understand in a controlled way how microdosing might support the larger dose experiences, or for those that maybe are better starting off with something really slow and subperceptual and working towards a more expansive state. But again, there's very little evidence to support anything more than a potential placebo response. Perhaps there's neuroplasticity, but as a scientist, I always want to set that level that we're still in sort of tested territory to really make big claims about microdosing. But surely lots of folks claim that they get benefit from it, and I think that really speaks to something, a possible mechanism that's going on there. Let's see, what else do we have here?
I just want to also name, and it's, again, I think I've emphasized this, that integration is really an attitude and a practice and a way of being. It's not really a doing. It's a lifestyle. Like I said, life is psychedelic and integration is a lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle of continuing to come back to wholeness, that there's a cycle of disintegration and integration. It's a back and forth, and continuing to commit to the process of wholeness over and over again.
Wonderful. Any other questions do we have for Lauren? Maybe you could share a little bit more about your training program.
Happy to do that. Happy to do that. So yeah, thank you so much for asking. I created a training that in many ways was a response to what I wanted in some of the trainings that I attended and learned immense amounts in, and just didn't get there. I hold a very intimate training container. There's 20 therapists and clinicians, doctors, nurses, 20 people only. It's experiential. Like I said, it's very essential to have knowledge of the landscape of the medicine that you're facilitating, and as well to see the variety of experience it presents. So if you are a therapist, a nurse, or a doctor and interested, please do check it out. As well, the context for the learning is circular. I really am efforting as much as I can to be out of fields of domination and hierarchy. I mentioned that around I think several times already, but even with regards to the plants and the compounds, but also in the way of learning. I hold that everybody has medicine, has wisdom, has something to share. I teach what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I bring in great people to share there. So this particular training will be really female-led and male-supported. It's going to be anchored by myself, Melissa Whippo, who is a ketamine psychotherapist out of the Bay Area and a real expert in women's health. She just published an article on ketamine for postpartum depression, as well with Sunny Strasberg, who's a therapist in Utah, an amazing medicine woman. Ashley Booth will be there. And Stephanie Coleman's my lead doc, dear friend of mine. Also, my father will be on the medical team. Guest lectures will be coming in from the one, the only, the great, my dear friend, Rick Doblin, as well. Carl Hart is speaking. Omid Naeem, who's an integrative psychiatrist that I love, Geeta Vaid, who is a psychoanalyst out of New York that works with ketamine, Ben Malcolm, who will talk about the psychopharmacology and the interactions, things like this, and a whole host of others. It's a very intimate training container that really holds that you're only ever as good as you are, and invites each clinician, participant, student to drop the mask of therapist, doctor, nurse, and just come as you are, to learn, and to let that learning be an intimate learning that supports the departure from the training with skills and knowledge around how to do this work well, and simultaneously invites you to leave with more fullness, with more of an integrated self, a more connected self, and a self that's connected to other selves in the space. The mycelial network that develops out of these intimate training containers continues to impress me in the ways in which they continue to collide and dance and create together. So if you are interested in learning in this kind of context, I invite you to check it out. It's training.embodiedlife.com. And yeah, that's what's happening. It's October 11th to the 16th in Topanga, California, deep in nature on a mountain perched above the sea. There we also hold nature as teacher and invite the space of reflection, contemplation, introspection with Mother Earth, and then come in and learn and grow and dance. And I like to weave in lots of little dance parties in between lectures and ketamine sessions. So if you're interested in a clinician, please consider. I'd love to meet you there.
Yeah, it's sure to be a fabulous offering. I put the links in the chat where you can connect with Lauren further about the training or her work, or just keep up with her on Instagram. I love your content. So thanks for making that available to everyone. I super appreciate your time today. You shared so much wisdom and great information for us to work with here. So I wish you a really happy weekend to everybody that joined us. Please come again next month, or you can also stay connected on our platform, Psychedelic Support. We'll see you there. So take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Stay connected.